You are a young healer in a small village by a river. Nobody writes anything down in this world. There are no books yet, no doctors with fancy tools, and no hospitals waiting nearby if something goes wrong. You learned what you know by watching your mother clean wounds, wrap broken arms, and boil bitter herbs for fevers. That is the whole of your training, and until 2 nights ago it was enough. Then the raiders came. Most of your village fought them off before the sun rose. Spears were thrown, fires were lit, people screamed and ran, and somehow, by morning, most of your friends and family were still alive. But one man was not whole anymore. His name is K-Day, and he is one of the strongest hunters your village has. During the fighting, a blade caught him across the face and took his nose clean off. Now he sits outside your hut with a cloth pressed to the wound, and he will not look up at you. You already know why. In your world, a face like this changes everything. People will stare. Children will be afraid. Some will whisper that the spirits marked him for something. He will still be the same man inside, the same hunter who once carried an injured child 3 days back to camp on his shoulders, but nobody will see that anymore. They will only see the wound. You have 3 choices, and none of them feel good. You could do nothing, and let him hide in his hut until shame wears him down. You could send him to live at the edge of the forest, the way some villages do with people who frighten others just by existing. Or you could try something that has never been tried in your village, or maybe anywhere. You could try to build him a new nose. Here's the strange part. The idea does not come to you all at once, like a lightning strike. It comes slowly, the way most good ideas actually do. You have noticed something before, without really thinking about it. When skin is cut but stays attached at one end, like a flap, it usually does not die. It stays pink, it stays warm, it heals, as long as blood can still reach it. You have seen this on smaller wounds, arms, legs, even once on a child's ear that was nearly torn off in an accident and somehow reattached itself because a strip of skin held on. If skin can survive attached at one end, you start to wonder, could you cut a flap of skin from somewhere else on KD's body, keep one end attached so the blood keeps flowing, and fold it over to cover the hole where his nose used to be? It sounds almost too simple, and also completely insane. Nobody has ever done this. There is no one to ask. If you are wrong, you could kill a man who already survived a war 2 nights ago. This is the point where most people would stop. Trying something untested on a living person, with no way to numb the pain and no way to stop serious bleeding if something goes wrong, is not a small risk. It is the kind of decision that can end 2 lives instead of saving one, but you keep thinking about the alternative. A future where Cade spends the rest of his life hidden away, ashamed of a wound he did not choose, and slowly that future feels worse to you than the risk of trying. You go find Cade. You do not promise him it will work. You cannot promise that. You only tell him the truth, that you have an idea, that it has never been tried, and that it might fail. Cade listens quietly. Then he says something you will remember for the rest of your life. He says he would rather risk death trying to look like himself again than live the rest of his life as someone people are afraid to look at. That is the moment everything changes. You spend the next day preparing. You sharpen your smallest blade against a stone until the edge catches the light. You boil thread made from plant fiber because you have noticed, without knowing why, that boiled thread seems to cause less sickness in wounds than thread pulled straight from a pouch. You have Cade sit very still while you study his face, deciding exactly where the skin will need to come from. His forehead has the most skin to spare, and it sits close enough to fold downward toward the space where his nose used to be. Word spreads through the village quickly. By evening, people are gathering outside your hut, not to help, but to watch. Some think you have lost your mind. One elder tells you plainly that you are about to kill a man for nothing. Another asks if you have been talking to spirits. Because no living person could think of something like this on their own, you ignore all of it. You have made your decision, and Cade has made his. As the sun begins to set, you kneel beside him with the blade in your hand, and for the first time since you started caring for the sick and injured in this village, your hands are shaking. Not because you are unsure of the idea, but because you finally understand what it means to be the very first person to try something that has never been tried before. You take a breath, you make the first cut, the blade moves slower than you expected. You are not just cutting skin, you are trying to shape it, to leave one edge still attached near Katie's eyebrow so the blood can keep flowing through it like a small river feeding a new patch of land. Cade grips a piece of wood in his fist and does not scream, though his whole body goes rigid with the pain. There is no way to make this painless. That kind of relief will not exist in the world for thousands of years. All you can offer him is speed, steady hands, and the promise that you will not stop halfway. Blood runs down his face, and for a moment you almost lose your nerve. This is the part nobody warns you about when you decide to try something new. It is not the planning that frightens you. It is the exact second when the plan becomes real, when it is no longer an idea in your head but a cut in a living person's skin, and there is no way to undo it. You keep going. You fold the flap of skin down from his forehead, angling it carefully over the open space where his nose used to be. This is the part you have thought about the most and worried about the most. If the flap does not fit correctly, it will not heal correctly. If you twist it too far, you might cut off the very blood flow that is supposed to keep it alive. You press it into place, shaping it as best you can with your fingers, trying to recreate something you have only ever seen from the outside, never from the inside of another person's face. Then comes the thread. You sew the edges together with small, careful stitches, the same way your mother once taught you to close a wound on an arm, except this is nothing like closing a wound on an arm. This is trying to convince the body that a piece of forehead now belongs somewhere else entirely. You do not know if the body will accept that lie. Nobody does. You are the first person asking the question. When it is finished, Katie's face is wrapped in cloth soaked with crushed herbs, the same mixture your mother always used to fight off the kind of sickness that creeps into open wounds. You have noticed, without understanding why, that wounds cleaned this way tend to heal cleaner than wounds left alone. You do not have a word for infection. You only have pattern. And pattern has kept you alive this long. That night, you do not sleep. You sit beside Katie, checking on him again and again, watching for fever, watching for the smell that tells you something inside a wound has gone wrong. Here is where it gets interesting. In your world, healing is not measured in days on a calendar. It is measured in signs. Warmth without heat is good. Pink skin is good. Silence from the wound, no pus, no foul smell is very good. You are reading a language that has no letters, only the body speaking for itself. By the third day, something remarkable happens. The flap of skin has not turned black. It has not shriveled. It has not fallen away, which is what you feared most. Instead, it looks pink, alive, connected. The blood really did keep flowing through that thin bridge of skin you left attached at his eyebrow, just like it did on smaller wounds you had noticed before. The idea that seemed almost insane 2 days ago is starting to look like it might actually work. But here's the part most people never think about. Success this early does not mean the danger is over. In your world, the first week after any wound is the most dangerous. Fever can appear on the 5th day just as easily as the first. You keep watching. You keep changing the cloth. You keep crushing fresh herbs every morning, because you have noticed, again through pattern rather than understanding, that fresh herbs seem to work better than herbs left sitting too long. Slowly, over the following weeks, the wound begins to close for real. The edges where you stitched the skin together start to blend rather than gape. The swelling goes down, and underneath the cloth, something is forming that looks less like a wound and more like the beginning of a shape. Not exactly a nose the way it used to be, but something that was not there a month ago. Word of what happened spreads far beyond your own village. Other healers, from villages you have never visited, start showing up to see for themselves. Some come to learn, some come to prove you wrong. When they see Cade walking through the village with a new nose built from his own skin, most of them stop arguing. This completely changes the picture. It becomes knowledge, and knowledge, once it survives being repeated by more than one person, has a strange habit of refusing to disappear. But here's the real question that will decide everything. A single success could easily have been luck. One man's body might have simply healed well on its own. The true test is not whether it worked once. The true test is whether it can work again on someone else, using nothing but the memory of what you did the first time. Word of Katie's new nose does not stay quiet for long. In a world without writing, stories travel the only way they can, mouth to mouth, village to village, change slightly each time they are told. By the time the story reaches villages 3 or 4 days away, some versions claim you brought a dead man back to life. Others say you stole a piece of the sky and stitched it onto his face. The truth is far less magical and far more important. You simply noticed something true about the human body, and you were brave enough to test it. Not long after, a second person arrives needing the same kind of help. This time it is a woman named Sela, who lost part of her nose to a sickness that ate away at the skin over many months. She has heard what happened to Kade, and she has walked 2 days to find you. This is the real test you were waiting for, whether the idea works, or whether Kade's healing was simply luck. You approach this second attempt differently than the first. You remember exactly where you cut too much skin last time and where you left too little. You remember how the flap needed to sit at a slightly different angle to fit naturally. This is the part that most people miss when they imagine discovery. It rarely happens in one perfect flash of genius. It happens through repetition, through small corrections, through paying close attention to what went right and what went almost wrong. Sela's surgery goes more smoothly than Kade's did. Your hands are steadier this time, not because you feel less fear, but because fear now has experience sitting next to it. The healing follows a similar pattern, the same signs you learned to watch for, the same herbs, the same careful waiting. Within weeks, Sela is walking through her own village with a face that no longer marks her as someone to fear or pity. 2 successes are no longer a story about one lucky healer. 2 successes are the beginning of a method, and methods, unlike stories, can be taught. Over the following years, you teach others what you learned, mostly through watching and doing rather than through words, since words alone cannot capture where exactly to angle a blade or how much skin is enough without being too much. Your students make mistakes. Some patients do not survive because this knowledge, remarkable as it is, exists in a world without antibiotics, without pain relief beyond herbs, and without any real understanding of why some wounds turn deadly while others heal clean. But slowly, patiently, the method improves. Each generation of healers who learns it adds a small correction of their own, the same way your own mistakes with Kade quietly improved what you did for Sela. This is where the story becomes something bigger than one village by a river. Because knowledge like this, once it survives being passed from teacher to student more than once, tends to keep traveling long after the person who discovered it is gone. Long after you are gone, other healers in other places will face the exact same problem you faced with Kade, a person disfigured by violence or sickness, desperate for a way to be seen as themselves again. And some of them, using methods that trace back, whether they know it or not, to healers exactly like you, will succeed. Here is the part that should genuinely surprise you. This exact pattern, a person losing part of their face and a healer inventing a way to rebuild it using their own skin, echoes across different corners of the ancient world, discovered again and again by people who never met each other and never shared a single word of instruction. It happened not because one brilliant person solved it once, but because human beings, faced with the same painful problem in different places, kept arriving at strikingly similar answers. Necessity has a way of teaching the same lesson to people who have never spoken to one another. Think about what that actually means. You did not have books. You did not have training. You did not even have a word for the thing you were doing. You had a wounded man who trusted you, a pattern you had noticed in smaller wounds, and the willingness to risk being wrong in order to try being right. That combination, curiosity plus courage plus care for another person, turns out to be one of the oldest and most powerful forces in human history. In your world, a wounded face was treated as a life-changing tragedy, something a healer would risk everything to fix. Today, people undergo procedures for far smaller reasons, chasing an idea of appearance that would have seemed unimaginable to someone like Kade, who simply wanted to feel human again after surviving a war. Tools have changed almost beyond recognition. The instinct behind them, the desire to fix what pain and chance have broken, to give a person back their sense of self, has not changed at all. You never set out to invent anything. You only wanted to help one frightened man sitting outside your hut, holding a cloth to his face, refusing to meet your eyes. But that single decision, made without any guarantee it would work, quietly became the first thread in a story that would stretch across centuries, long after your name was forgotten and long after the village by the river disappeared into the earth. Some of the most important ideas in human history did not begin with genius. They began with someone simply refusing to look away from another person's pain.